New York Times is reporting on a surge in immigration arrests taking place at airports across the country. According to documents obtained by the Times and interviews with immigration lawyers, the Trump administration has begun arresting foreign citizens, including spouses of Americans with expired U.S. visas, as they travel through airports. The Times notes that immigration agents in plain clothes have whisked away targets at check-in counters and arrival gates and enforcement actions in at least 15 airports in recent weeks. These arrests appear to be an expansion of an arrangement between TSA and ICE. Previously, individuals with expired visas were not prioritized for deportation unless they had committed crimes. But that has changed under President Trump, whose administration has undertaken a campaign of mass deportation and views all visa overstays now as illegal. They keep changing the rules. People are afraid to show up to their appointments. They're afraid to do anything. They're afraid to leave their homes because of this terrifying ICE deportation effort. Meanwhile, Texas Congressman Joaquin Castro is renewing his calls for the closure of the Dilley Detention Center. The Democratic lawmaker toured the South Texas immigration facility yesterday alongside fellow members of Congress and spoke directly with several of the detainees being forcibly held there. The facility is currently holding roughly 500 people, including more than 100 children. And Congressman Castro joins us now. Thank you for coming on the show this morning. Can you tell us more about what you saw inside the detention center? I'm particularly interested in all of it, but the children being held there for how long? And are any types of rules for due process or providing people with basic human necessities happening?
Yeah, thank you, Mika. And it's good to be with you all this morning. Americans have seen the brutality on the streets by ICE, and you just talked about one story in Seattle. We've seen American citizens that have been killed, folks that have been protesting. Of course, we saw what happened to Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and Johan in Maine. But there's a brutality behind the prison walls of these detention centers that almost no one gets to see except for members of Congress who have an opportunity to go inspect them and get in there and check it out. And so what I've seen as I visited Dilley, and this was my 7th inspection of Dilley this year, is I've seen a lot of desperate children. I've seen traumatized children. There is a system there that is abusive of people. The folks have complained in the past about worms in the food. Yesterday, they complained about yellow drinking water. And so it's a system that really, psychologically and physically traumatizes people. So many folks there also don't get the medical attention they need. There was a woman that told me that she just had a heart procedure done recently and hasn't been given a follow-up appointment and also has not been given the medication that she needs, because this place is run by a private prison company, and so they're trying to save as much money as they can, I imagine, so they don't give people the medication they need. So there is this kind of ugly brutality behind those prison walls, in addition to what you see ICE doing out on the streets.
So what's the recourse? I mean, it seems like it's almost hard to keep up with everything that's going wrong here and what is happening on American soil. And of course, we know that all human beings on American soil have a right to due process, let alone what's happening inside what is being called detention centers. How would you describe them?
I think that place is a trailer prison. And the youngest person there yesterday, when I asked, they said the youngest person there is 2 months old. So there's a 2-month-old baby there and 4 pregnant women there right now. And I can tell you that it's no place for a 2-month-old baby to be, or even a 1 or 5-year-old kid. And so we want the Dilley Detention Center shut down. And we know that it's possible because during the Biden administration, that's exactly what happened. This place was shut down. These kids should not be in detention. It's the only place that I can think of where we have allowed in our country for the commodification of child imprisonment. There are investors who make more money the more kids that are put into the Dilley Detention Center. And I just think that in our country, that's a grotesque thing.
Elizabeth, you have the next question.
Sure. I wanted to ask Representative Castro just about the Times story, what he thought. This is really striking to me how, ISIS now and with the cooperation of TSA is now detaining people at airports. These are people who are in the country legally. They've overstayed their visa, but they've applied for extensions. In one case, there was a Ugandan woman in a wheelchair who has sickle cell anemia who was detained, even though she has an active asylum application. There also have been 2 women who were recently detained who were married to Americans and were in the process of obtaining their residency permits, and they were detained at airports when in one case she was with her husband. What do you make of this, and what is the purpose here?
I think the purpose is cruelty, and the purpose is to send this message that we don't like immigrants and we don't want anybody here. And you're right, Donald Trump, and during his campaign, sold the country on this idea that we're going to go after criminals and we're going to deport criminals. But what we've seen is that instead of going after the worst of the worst, in many cases, they've gone after the best of the best. People that have lived here for decades, who have families, who have not committed any crimes at all, who have been productive members of society. And worse yet, many of these folks, including ones that I talked to yesterday, had work authorizations for another 6 months, one person for another year and a half. They literally followed all of the rules, albeit under the last administration, but followed all of the rules. And now they're sitting there in this prison wondering, what did I do wrong? You told me to do X, Y, Z. I did X, Y, Z. And now here I am sitting in this prison.
Well, and that's why you have people afraid to show up for their appointments. They're trying to do the right thing, but they're too scared now at this point, which is a system of terrifying experiences set up by this entire process. Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas, thank you very much for your work on this. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.